Hi everybody, welcome back to the session 4, and thank you all for staying around in the high-tech world, because it can get a bit tiring, but we've got a fantastic session lined up for you now with some really experienced speakers to talk about the issue of fit-for-purpose community development models. And I think so far what we've been hearing is lots of discussion, and quite rightly, about the process of the native title claim itself and compensation claims and everything that revolves around that. The big question I think being posed in this session is, well, so what? In effect, if you get a determination, what happens after a determination? If you get a land rights claim in the case of the Northern Territory or somewhere else, what happens once you get a land right or an interest? And I think a lot of people are thinking about that now, but what we've got today are two of our rep bodies who are actually really trying to work in this field of where the native title and land rights rubber hits the road. How is it that traditional owners, native title holders are going to leverage and gain the maximum out of these sometimes quite meagre rights and interests that they've obtained? So we have for us today in our fit-for-purpose community development model, we've got Ian Sweeney, Community Development Manager from the Central Land Council's Community Development Program. And it's great to have you, Ian, because the CLC's program really did start this amongst rep bodies, I think, kind of recognised the issue and the need for community development approach. We've also then got three very fine professionals from Qsnts. We've got Felicity Tyson, who's the Chief Operating Officer, and we've got Joyce Gear and Carmen Coombs-Delaney, Development Facilitator and Development Officer, who are actually now working on the ground trying to get a community development model going within that rep body area. So what we're going to do is we're going to have 15 minutes presentation from Ian. We'll have 15 minutes from our Qsnts colleagues, leaving about 15 minutes for Q&A. And Hannah Knott's going to be our chat moderator. And I'd really like to put out a big plea that as you listen to our presenters, put some questions down in the Q&A. That's where they go. Don't wait till the end. As you're hearing what people are talking about, pose some questions in that section so that we then have a bit of, like energy and life to the discussion once the presenters have finished. So I'll hand it over to you, Ian. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Di, for the introduction. And look, I'll just start by acknowledging that I'm talking to you today from Aranda country, where I'm fortunate enough to live and work. I'd also like to say a big thanks to CNTA for inviting us to talk again. So to David and Petronella, and to Julie for her ongoing sort of support, really to be involved in the community of practice that CNTA facilitates. We feel very fortunate to be invited. I'll just share this, share my screen here. So as Di said, I'm talking today about the community development work that we do at Central Land Council, but I'll touch on the work that we do for those of you who aren't familiar with our work, but I'll focus on that fit for purpose side, so that adaptive practice that we have to ensure that this development work fits our context. And I acknowledge that the context in the NT is unique, but I hope that the broader themes, you can find some sort of usefulness in applying this to your own contexts. So One of the key things that the community development unit has is a CD framework, which is really our guide for how we do our work. And this initial quote is really just defining the work that we do. Community development, as we all know, is a very commonly used term. So it's important to define what we do and what we don't do in this framework. So essentially, the program, and this is from the framework again, the program is about Aboriginal self-determination. It's about how we support people to control the development of their community's futures. And we've just revised this framework last year, and I'll talk some more about that shortly. This is a snapshot of the history of the program. The program started, like most things do, with very modest means. There was only maybe $100,000 or a couple of $100,000 a year of projects for those first 5 years, and only a couple of staff managing that income and supporting groups to do their work. But it's grown, and it's really grown exponentially. There, we now cover the entire CLC region. As you can see, we're getting close to $170 million worth of projects that have been done. The $170 million of people's land use income has been invested in their communities now over 17 years. So we divide ourselves anthropologically. We have the Tanami region in the northwest, up on that top left there, which is predominantly there's a very large gold mine there, the Granites Gold Mine, that provides a lot of income for the program. And it's it's mainly land rights, it's mainly Aura in that northwest. The eastern region, which is predominantly native title land, and you can see there's a lot of groups in the east, but their income tends to be really low. It tends to be really modest income. Some of those groups might get $25,000 a year of pastoral license money, compared to sort of $4 million of gold mining royalty and affected area payment in the Tanami. And then the southwest region, which is a mix between Aura and native title. The Uluru rent money is the main income stream in the southwest. So how do we actually do this work? So this is what we call our planning river, and it really just outlines how we work with groups, and we use this tool in really all our meetings, and sometimes a number of times in a meeting. So the trigger for getting involved in the CD program is for a group to have income through their land use arrangements. And when a group has that income and wants to invest it and have us work with them to do projects, the first thing that we do is we set up a governance arrangement with the group. So commonly you might have a traditional owner group that will delegate the planning of the projects to a working group who will develop up the projects, but then go back to that TO group for the the final allocation of income. So the steps 3 and 4 are all about that community planning that we do on what people want to achieve and how we're best to achieve that. Who are they going to partner with to do the project? And and sort of what are their options? What are things going to cost? And that's where CLC goes away and develops up budgets, works with project partners to develop up those project plans that then come back to that group to make a decision on. And so once that decision's been made, then we enter into a legal agreement with a project partner, and that's where Land Council has more of a contract management role, in making that, making sure that project happens, make sure things go the way that the group intends it to. And then that last step, how did it go? And that's our that's our monitoring and evaluation coming in to make sure that things have gone the way that that the group wanted to, and any lessons learned. So this just lays out the that what I was talking about before, that slow start to the unit as we as we developed our practice, and to that expansion and now consolidation. And you can see through this slide the way that income has grown, you know, and really significantly in these last 7 years, where we're getting you know, really significant amounts of incomes, a number of projects, and then our staff resourcing has grown to you know, to meet that workload demand. The you know, the projects that have come on board, like the income streams that have come on board, are mapped across the bottom there, and we're seeing an increasing number of smaller groups with smaller amounts of money want to get involved in the program. And there's a match funds project where we received some money from NIA to be able to match people's income to support those, particularly those native title groups that don't have such big income. As I mentioned earlier, the CD framework is really a foundational document for the unit. It was initially developed very much in the early days of the unit, and it's now been updated regularly. The most recent incarnation of it, we took 2 years of monitoring and evaluation interviews with what we called key informants, constituents that have been involved in the program, often for many years. And those people have, you know, given their thinking about where we're on track, what we need to do differently. And we've seen, you know, we've seen some significant changes to how we work as a result of those key informants, particularly trying to do deeper work with communities to try to make a bigger impact and to do more advocacy as well on this work and this approach. Another really important part of our practice is having this monitoring and evaluation that's been going now for 12 years. The monitoring and evaluation has, you know, in those early years really had a shoestring resourcing, and I think we were working out how effective we were doing, whether what we were doing was meeting the aspirations of our constituents. But we didn't have the resources to really create that evidence of the outcomes and change that the program, that we feel anecdotally the program is achieving. And so we've just recently got some good resourcing for that. We've now got a specialist monitoring and evaluation position in the unit, and we're starting to do a longitudinal study in Lajamanu, which is one of the communities where we have a lot of work. The CD reference group. So the CD reference group, again, was started in the really early days of the unit, and I feel that we're really fortunate to have had, we've had a good number of different people on the reference group, but it's, you can see our terms of reference there on the screen, but in short, it's it's like having a critical friend that will challenge us on our practice. We can take issues or dilemmas that we're having to them, and it's it's had a really significant impact again on the way we work. We've had some really strong advice. You can see Dave Martin he's currently on the reference group there, as well as Deirdre Tedmans and Josie Douglas. And Dave's always given us some really solid advice about getting out in meeting consultations, much more to the forefront, and trying to sometimes get away from those bigger meetings that can create a more contested space for decision making. In more recent years, we've started to establish a community development network. This idea came after when NLC started doing their community development work. We brought the NLC executive in to meet with the Uluru Katajuda TOs to talk about the work they'd been doing, and seeing the great conversations that they were having, we thought we should try to do something like this and incorporate the practitioners, the staff as well. And so we've established this network, which gives us I think a really rich amount of thinking and and support on our practice and improving our practice. We've been able to do TO exchanges of bringing groups, taking groups from the centre to the top end to talk to each other about the work they're doing and their learnings on it, and doing that with staff as well. And through this CNTA forum, I think we've started to build a really good relationship with Qsnts, who are obviously presenting next, and really excited about having them down to our CD network meeting next week. So I wanted to pick out governance as one of the elements of the work that I feel that we've put a significant focus on in more recent years. I think the program's always known the importance of governance, but I think finding the right resourcing and ways to really support governance and the development has been something we've only really, I think we've only really got a good thing going in these last few years, and we've started doing it with two of our big corporations, GMAC and Kura, who are both get income from the Granites gold mine. And we've managed to get some independent consultants in that deliver the governance and financial training, with support from Land Council in there, and a monitoring and evaluation specialist that sits through all the meetings of the training sessions. And then Land Council and the consultants leave, and the M&E specialist sits there with the group and talks about what can be done, what worked well, what can be done better, and then gives that feedback into that next day's session. And so we've really been able to develop a great governance where we're getting some great governance training, to get some really tricky concepts into language that everybody can understand. Now, finally, wanted to finish on the major challenges. This slide is actually the same as it was in the presentation I gave a year ago, but I think the challenges stayed the same. I'm hopeful that we're making some progress on some of the challenges, but I think we have an ongoing issue on things that our constituents and myself, and I'm sure many of you, would feel that government responsibilities end up getting funded by people's land use income, just through those gaps of service delivery that aren't being delivered often. There are often concerns of cost shifting as well that can go on, with some levels of government with this funding, particularly in the remote context. The capacity of project partners can be an issue on finding really strong organisations to deliver the work is quite a key part of the successful impact of the work. Sustaining impact. This is part of what we're trying to do with this is to, with this slightly different way of working, where we're trying to work deeper with groups where we can to really build project partner capacity and have an ongoing impact in communities, often beyond just the life of what a community development project might be. The inequality across groups, we have that issue again with the native title groups that don't always have big money. We're hopeful that this match funds, matching groups dollar for dollar, will go some way into supporting these groups. And then just finally, through that big growth in these more recent years, just the impact that has on the organisation to resource it, for us as a unit to keep people up to speed with the best practice that we want to deliver. Just wanted to acknowledge that's operationally, there's always challenges when you have big growth periods. Thanks very much.
We just had a chat question. We're just wondering if you could provide a view on whether Aboriginal people end up having to fund things which should be funded by governments, like language programs in schools.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, absolutely it does. There's a number of programs that fund bilingual education. They fund linguists in schools. They fund resources, educational resources, putting them into language. I think the thing that we always pose to our groups is saying, we can consider this a government responsibility, and we can go and advocate to government for that, and I think we're getting better at doing that. But it's ultimately your choice, or do you want to get it happening now and fund it now? We are entering into co-funding arrangements with, with NT Department of Education and other NT departments in a number of educational stuff, such as the bilingual resources, but even also just school infrastructure as well.
Thanks very much, Ian. And I thought it was good to just get a question in there to get things going a bit. And I'm sure that Felicity and Joyce and Carmen will be able to, raise issues that are similar to that. So now I'll pass it over first to Felicity Tyson, who's going to give an overview of the Qsnts framework, and then in turn to Joyce and Carmen.
Okay, great. Thanks, Di. Hello, everyone. And again, thanks for CNTA for facilitating this conference this week, particularly in trying times, coordinating across Australia. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which Joyce and I are meeting today, Meanjin, and I will just let the other guys introduce themselves and then we'll come back to me.
Hi, as Felicity mentioned, I'm Joyce and I'm here in our Brisbane office, and I'll hand over to my colleague in Isa.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carmen Coombs-Delaney. I am a Kondamukka woman, but I am actually on Kalkadoon country, so I'd like to pay respects and acknowledge the Kalkadoon people on the land and which I'm meeting on today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carmen. So look, I guess going back to Di's opening in relation to in our region anyway, where we don't have an ALRA type scheme, but we have the Native Title Act, which is, as a rep body, that's what we're funded to perform functions under that. We did get to a point where we had a series of determinations, and it came to meeting with a client who had a determination back in 2014, who basically put to Qsnts, well, what did it all mean? What do these rights and interests? And in that case, as in much of our region, the rights and interests recognised are non-exclusive. And you can see the breadth of Qsnts' service region. So, we have desert mob, we have saltwater mob, and we have people who've been hit by various and often harsh extremes of colonisation. So often the determination of rights and interests will be mostly non-exclusive. So as I said, so meeting with a client, this program that Joyce and Carmen will talk about in more detail, basically grew from the question, well, we've got rights and interests, but we don't really actually understand what that means and what benefit that is to us and our future generations. And these conversations started to be had between the clients and Qsnts, and ideas about how we could work with clients to basically work towards developing sustainable outcomes long-term towards, and this is probably the similarity between Qsnts and CLC's model is self-determination. So that's definitely an area of commonality. The difference here is we are starting from a point of zero funding. PBCs, as everyone will be aware, get about 70, 80 grand a year each. So it was how, with very little funding, can we start to implement those native title rights and interests sustainably. So our model, unlike CLC, it's nascent and we have a lot to learn. And from Qsnts has a model of like an interdisciplinary team working with each client, which has a researcher, a lawyer, a community relations officer, and anybody else who needs to come in and provide their particular expertise. But we decided we're still prosecuting claims. We're going to be prosecuting compensation claims. we need to bring in the expertise to help deliver this growing sort of program of what we call client development as opposed to community development, and the reason for that being how we're funded under the Act and how our function are described, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So out of this need for this very important post determination implementation, and also in a recognition of the need to actually get in prior to determination to set PBCs up to succeed, we developed the Client Development Unit, and we're very lucky to have Joyce and Carmen with us. Part of our plan is, with only 2 staff and plus me as the head of operations, is that with an unlikelihood that there'll be a lot of funding for us to grow our CDU at this point in time, a big part of our approach to working with clients and rolling out the People Place Partnership, which is our client development framework, is that we will start building capacity across what we call our client management teams, who will each work with the CDU to work with the rollout of the People Place Partnership. So look, I think that's probably as much as I need to say given the time, but I suppose I just want to comment on the need for the community of practice, and how grateful we are to be involved and to be invited to engage with the CLC and the NLC, and we hope that community of practice expands, because we have a lot to learn. We don't have the funding and the present expertise, for example, to develop our monitoring and evaluation, which will grow over time, and hopefully one day we will be able to partner with similar universities such as La Trobe to assist us. But I just really want to thank and encourage other rep bodies to engage in the community of practice as it grows, because it's for rep bodies, it's something that we rely on other people's expertise, and no need to reinvent the wheel. And we also hope reciprocally that our model can assist like the CLCs and the NLCs, where they have areas that are subject to the sort of royalty streams that other areas do under the ALRA. So we hope there's a lot of reciprocity, and also hope that we can talk more about this at the IATSA Summit when it comes to it. We'll hope to get the community of practice. So this is just everyone on notice. It would be really good to arrange some out of session community of practice sessions at the IATSA Summit in May, end of May, beginning of June. But I will be in contact with all the rep bodies about that at a later stage. And Joyce is just telling me I've got to remember to say something.
Oh yeah, I was gonna.
I'll let you talk about that. So look, unless there's any questions, I'll hand over to Joyce and Carmen, who are really developing the People Place Partnership.
No questions yet, Felicity, so let's continue with the presentation, and then we'll go to the question section.
Thank you.
Right, so the People, Place and Partnership is a fit-for-purpose approach, which means it has the ability to be customized and tailored to the client's specific needs, obstacles, and aspirations. It's also rights-focused, which means it acknowledges that rights are the foundation and the platform of opportunity for Indigenous self-determination. The People, Place and Partnership is also place-based. So it's a framework that identifies and responds to the particularities and diversities of place that our clients face. And it's strength-driven. So it acknowledges the inherent power that people possess when they are strong in culture, practice traditional knowledge, connect to country, and they can understand and utilize their legal rights. This is then used to build constructive partnerships and relationships with stakeholders that exist across their country.
Okay, so this slide here is a list of services that we have collated, which are all common aspirations that our clients have expressed to us as development opportunities that they'd like to pursue. And now that these groups are entering into the post-determination space, it's clear that they're really wanting to focus on building a strong economic future for their younger generations and really leverage their native title rights and interests that they've fought for, whilst preserving culture and caring for country. And as we know, PBCs are tasked with a wide range of responsibilities that range from compliance of their statutory functions to progressing aspirations of common law holders. And over time, these functions have grown in number and complexity. And so these collated aspirations that we've put together are linked to the themes of people, place, and partnership. So an example is developing healthy country plans involves mobilizing people to care for a place by partnering with a stakeholder.
The people, place, and partnership essentially functions like a multi-layered map that helps us capture the baseline of where each group is at. And then we can identify areas for growth and the opportunities that exist. And this is done by examining who are the people and where are they located, what skills do they already possess, and what aspirations do they hold. We then look at the place. Where do opportunities exist on country? Where are the places of importance? Where is there tenure that can be leveraged for additional benefits? And which areas need to be protected? And partnerships. So who are your stakeholders? Which local government areas overlap with your country? What agreements are in place? And how can these agreements be strengthened and also renegotiated in the future for greater benefits? By creating this group snapshot, the task of leveraging rights and negotiating future benefits becomes clearer. It provides a pathway forward. It also enables people to tap into existing opportunities since their skills and interests have been identified, and it allows PBCs to be proactive in their partnerships.
Can I just, and I'm just going to add one thing to this slide. And I think, you know, in the conversations I've had with Ian and other rep bodies is irrespective of the level of income stream, governance underscores all of the necessity to build governance, which is our overarching kind of focus, is a need irrespective of your income stream. So that's one of the commonalities in our models. I think that will be an important sharing point.
So the evolution of people, place, and partnership was largely driven by the success and learnings from the Buntamara Mapping Resources to Manage Country project, which was conducted by Qsnts in 2019. The project was funded by a capacity building grant of around $96,000 from the then Jobs, Land and Economy program in Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. And the Buntamara Mapping Resources to Manage Country project provided the planning framework for the development of the three interconnected products of people, place and partnership, which is together provided for some short-term but largely long-term leveraging of opportunities through the implementation of native title rights and interests. So we conducted a skills audit, which is people, the cultural mapping, which is place, and the stakeholder engagement plan, which is partnership. We then conducted a coded thematic analysis on participant evaluation responses, and by examining the thematic results from what was the most useful, it offers us insight into what were the enabling factors for progressing parallel objectives. And it's clear from people's responses that being on country and having a place-based design and delivery where priorities were culturally grounded was a huge benefit and a highlight throughout the workshop. And it's also important to note that these evaluations were anonymous, and as such, it's our belief that they didn't capture the breadth of the importance and facilitation of youth and knowledge transfer.
The need for people, place, and partnership is multi-layered. It's partly based on a literature analysis that tells us that there's a clear need for this type of product amongst PBCs. For example, in the 2019 IATSIS PBC survey, PBCs stated that their top 3 priorities were to fulfill responsibilities under the Native Title Act, to look after and manage country, and to strengthen culture. And more recently, the Joint Standing Committee report on Northern Australia identified that the struggle that Indigenous people face in is in how to leverage rights for the economic and social advancement of their communities. And that title to land is by itself not enough. The JSC also commented that not only is funding insufficient, it's impinging on capacity building, and it generates uncertainty which undermines effective governance. Qsnts has also identified a strong need for these types of support activities within our service region. So in our region, we will soon have 36 PBCs. There are currently 24 PBCs and 12 claim groups. In a regional scoping exercise, we found that 88% of clients that we engaged with were interested in partaking in the PPP project and saw a great need for projects that strengthened PBC capabilities to perform functions that go beyond compliance.
Just one more minute, guys, okay?
Sure. I'll just speak a little bit quickly about the PPP planning cycle. It takes part in 4 phases. The phase 1 involves strategic planning and direction within the PBC, and then phase 2 is about implementing and the action plan. In phase 3, we really hope that one of the longer term aims of the program is for neighboring PBCs to collaborate together on a regional level and thereby establishing a regional Indigenous voice for priorities and consultation. And this would be particularly useful for working with regional service providers that deliver services such as local government areas, health service providers, and education providers. And establishing a regional voice will support self-determination, and it mirrors how regional societies may have operated prior to colonization. We do have a bit more to say, but
Look, I don't really want to cut you off because we haven't got any questions yet. So if you want to take another minute or so, please, finish the presentation. Yeah.
Thanks, Di. And perhaps it's probably, yes.
Yeah,
the policy alignment.
Yeah, funding and policy imperatives. So currently, like Felicity mentioned, PBCs get on average 70,000 per annum, and that's only provided to 62% of registered PBCs, which is insufficient to fulfill core obligations, let alone engage in activities that provide more meaningful outcomes through the leveraging of native title rights and other agreements. And although there are multiple policy imperatives across multiple levels of government that call for additional support, such as the Indigenous Advancement Strategy and even closing the gap, resources to engage in these activities are hard to come by. And as such, the PPP model will often utilize the formation of stakeholder relationships to be able to capitalize on proponent funding to conduct additional business. So although this piggybacking may be a good strategy, it's not applicable to all groups, particularly those that aren't in resource-intensive regions that can capitalize on money from proponent funding to get together to conduct additional business. Is there anything you wanted to add?
So just in case, I suppose to repeat, so in our view, the PPP aligns with the objectives of the Indigenous Advancement Strategy, which we've had conversations with NIAA and they are in agreement about that. So we're hoping we're currently going through funding discussions. But I'd also say, and Joyce referred to the regional grouping and scaling up of the model, which we would also say would align with other government policy imperatives such as closing the gap. And this is where groups in a place-based regional voice can actually be the point of interaction between local groups and healthcare providers, education providers, because we would say that self-determination is about groups, not organisations, but that would be, and therefore those TOs would be the points for conferring and agreement making about what's going on country. So yeah, in a really rushed way, I would add that as an additional policy objective. Or the program, the design is the meeting further policy objectives at a Commonwealth level, state level, and at a local government level.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just close by adding that, we know that this is a long-term practice, it's not a short-term project, and that several of the commonalities that do exist across many regions are the importance of governance, particularly governance that goes beyond compliance, and rights as the basis for development initiatives, and the importance of projects being designed and delivered with a place-based methodology.